Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to the MAGIA Mindset. Today's guest has played at the highest level for MLS teams such as New England Revolution, Seattle Sounders, and the Los Angeles Galaxy. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome our guest, James Riley. Roll the intro. All right, James, thank you so much. I know during this time, especially 2020, it's been a difficult year, and I know your plate is truly full in how you have to manage your business, your coaching, if it's either behind the scenes or on the field. It's a lot of obstacles we all have to endure. So I know our plate and your plate is full. So I truly appreciate you putting in the time and getting on the podcast to talk about the beautiful game.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to talk about the beautiful game. So I appreciate the invitation.
Fantastic. So let's just dive into your playing career and your journey. And obviously, a lot of our audience would love to know even challenges that you have to overcome, because anytime you have to go from each level to the next level, there's always going to be challenging times. No one can keep going from level to level without enduring challenging time, because then everybody would be making it.
Certainly.
So if we can talk about that and kind of experiences you endured and how you kind of got through it.
No, great question. I mean, I think back to my epiphany story, and what really catapulted my development was, I remember, man, it gets to be an emotional story as well, but I remember being on my club team in Colorado, born and raised in Colorado Springs, single mother, right? Low income. We were on food stamps for a little bit, and then she just got too proud. My mom's of Korean descent and just started working extra hours and a lot of overtime. So she's been a hotel housekeeper for 37 years now at the Broadmoor Hotel. So I get a lot of my blue collar work ethic from her. And I remember playing on my club team at the time and going to a team meeting, and she could never be at these team meetings just because she was working. And so, I had great friends still to this day on the teams that would pick me up and drive me to training. So they'd pick me up and drive me to this training or this meeting, and a coach that I adored, literally, I loved this coach. I loved him. And he was at the board, and we're getting ready to go to our first showcase ever as a team. And this is where you're finally getting in front of college coaches, and it was going to be an amazing experience. I think we're going to go to Cincinnati Blue Chips, which is at the time like the number one showcase. And he goes, okay, we're going to reach out to coaches for you. What schools would you like us to reach out to or make initial contact with? And I just jumped up. And at the time, I've been reading Soccer America. And so knew of essentially the top 10 schools. And I started yelling out like Duke, Wake Forest, UConn, Creighton, Santa Clara, UCLA. I was so excited to start naming these schools, these big time schools. And he looked at me and he goes, James, let's get realistic. Right. And so this is in front of everyone. Parents are there, players. And again, I adored this coach. And so I sit down, everyone laughs, and I kind of sit down. I think I'm 14, 15 at the time. And the meeting goes on. And then one of my good friends' father drives us home, and he's usually pretty upbeat. And he was dead silent in the drive home. And I'm thinking I did something wrong. And he dropped his son off first, which he never did. And so I'm like, what did I do? Right. And so I'm sitting there, and he drives over to drop me off. And mind you, the income disparity is unbelievable. I mean, there's a highway, and they're very affluent and wealthy, both business owners, but good people. And then they drive over to kind of where we lived. I would say, middle to low income, not like great, right? My mom just worked hard and did well with the money that we had. And so he drives to drop me off, and he usually just kind of parks on the side of the sidewalk and drops me off. This time he pulls into the driveway, turns the car off and parks it, looks at me and says, James, don't you ever let anyone tell you you can't do something or accomplish your dreams. He goes, if you want it, right, put in the work, let's set up a plan, and we'll execute accordingly, right, in those words. And so just that belief in me was huge, right? And so belief in someone that I admired and also loved was just tremendous words. And again, to back up in the story, my father left before I was one. So I've been in the Manor house for a long time, had a stepfather that was in and out, but not a deep relationship with him either. And so I really treated my soccer coaches, they were essentially father figures. So on the same day, to have one of my biggest soccer coaches that I loved and adored kind of tell me to get realistic and kind of minimize my dreams, and then to have another father figure say, no, you can accomplish this, right? This is how you do so. It was huge. And the coach that minimized my dreams didn't see the work I was putting in behind the scenes. Like, didn't see it. It's all I had. I couldn't afford one-on-one coaching. I couldn't afford soccer camps. And so I had a cement wall in my garage. And we talk about the 10,000 hour rule. I eclipsed that times 10. I mean, I spent so much time on this wall, just, cassette tapes, CDs, just playing music, playing on this wall and just visualizing, right? And not necessarily visualizing playing pro, just visualizing my success and visualizing having fun on the field. And it was just my time just be, fully expressive. And so that story, honestly, I tell everyone that's kind of my epiphany story. And I usually tear up when I say it. So I'm glad I was able to catch myself. But again, it was just the belief in a coach. And throughout my career, it's always been coaches that have said that. So then I get onto that, finally go up and play with the Colorado Rush. And you just had coaches that just said, I believe you can make the state ODP team. And so I'm like, what is that? You should try out the state ODP team. Try out, make the ODP team. Then you get the ODP team, and that coach goes, I think you can make the regional team. And then I'm like, what's that? And he tells me, he's like, okay, this is what you have to do. And so then I go there. Then you make the regional team. Then you have my regional coach says, I think you can be one of the top players at this regional event, right? Make the top 11 at the regional event in the national pool, what have you. And back then, ESP was the big camp, right? The Adidas Elite Soccer Program. So you had the Cocoa Beach event, which was the regional event. Then you had ESP probably 6 to 7 months apart. One was in November, Thanksgiving, and the other one was in the summer. And I just lit up both of those. And then by that September, or I think it was July 1, when coaches could finally call you, college coaches. I mean, my phone was blowing up. Mm-hmm. I was getting so many letters. My mom couldn't believe it. And it was all because I just put in the work behind the scenes, and I had a belief in myself, but it was instilled by a coaching father figure. So I always tell people, right? Never let anyone minimize your dreams. But the biggest thing is you have to make sure that your daily habits align with that. If you have dreams to say play in Europe here, and your daily habits are way over here, like, it just doesn't align. So even today, I never tell players to change their dreams and goals. I should never be able to minimize those for you. What I will tell you and what we will address is your daily habits, and to make sure they're aligned and congruent. And so ultimately, that was my biggest story. And so throughout my career, I've had, especially through college, my coaches have been father figures. I just spoke to Message Jay Vidovich, who was one of the biggest influences in my soccer career. He was the head coach at Wake for, 20 plus years or so, or maybe just under that, but literally saw a scrawny 115-pound player from Colorado Springs, and saw me not for what I was at the moment, but for what I could be. And that was just special to me. So a little bit long-winded, but that epiphany story for me is kind of essentially my journey, kind of being the underdog a lot, and then just putting in the work behind the scenes that no one sees. And that was just kind of been kind of the theme of my career.
No, I mean, James, that's powerful, man. And it touches me because I was raised by a single mom. I was raised by a single mom that was diagnosed with polio since the age of 4. And I was in a household of people that no one was athletes. Everybody was in the educational field. Mm-hmm. So athletics is a source of hobby. Right. And everybody's like, when the hobby is done, go and get a real job. Mm. And for me, having to pave a way to go against it, I know how it feels. And sometimes that moment where you hit it, you get emotional, you get teary, because it felt like you're at it alone. But there's a few coaches or someone that we always remember that constantly either were by your side, or they weren't the believer they were, like the way that coach said, maybe those are unrealistic. but you make them into believers. You're like,
Mhm.
looking back, you're like, man, all of the coaches that were saying that's a little bit too high now are all by me now.
Yeah.
Now they're like, it's funny how life works. In its time where when you're a small fish in a big pond,
Yeah.
you become that big fish in a smaller pond.
Right.
Life it has that full circle, and I think nothing is always unachievable. I
Yep.
think you just have to surround the individual like yourself that had the right work ethic with the right mentors, the right
Mhm.
support
Mhm.
system. Because if you're going to be willing to put in that work day in, day out, and the
Mhm.
right people are telling you how to do it and how to map your path, then, you know, you don't miss the boat.
Right.
You know, so that's huge, huge. And thank you for sharing it.
Of course.
What I want to kind of touch into, and you kind of touching on it, is one of the main parts of this podcast is the mindset. I love to get into the mindset because you get to a certain point that is not about the skills. It's
Yep.
not about the talent.
Yep.
It's the mental side.
Mhm.
It's the mindset of how much are you willing to sacrifice?
Mhm.
How disciplined are you? How determined are you? How elite is your
Mhm.
mind
Mhm.
to be competing with the most elite?
Mhm.
And at that level, you going to probably one of the top college programs. From
Mhm.
there, going and playing at the highest level our country offers here. What was it that you saw in progression, meaning from college, or actually, let's just go before college, from youth, elite
Yep.
youth level
Yep.
to college,
Yep.
and then from
Yep.
college to the highest at professional? What was it that really you're like, all right,
Mhm.
this is what stands out of certain individuals,
Yeah.
and even you thought you had and you're putting into it, but you saw other players having, to kind of remind our audience of what it takes to kind of get there?
Right. Mentality is huge. I mean, I love to put a percentage on it, and it's always debatable, but I think mentality to progressing levels is like above 60%. I get it's so paramount. But it goes back to the story of my mother, right? So for her to just wake up, no alarm clock, 6 a.m., go put in a 12-hour day cleaning hotel rooms. So literally to this day, anytime my family and I leave a hotel room, anytime as a pro we left a hotel room, I always made sure things were tidied up, try to help the housekeeper out. I'll always tip. I'll always leave a tip. I'll always say thank you. I'll even leave if we don't need service, and I'm like, we don't need our room cleaned right now. I'll just like, don't clean it, because in the housekeeper's mind, they have a certain number of rooms. So if they have 12 rooms to clean, and you can help lessen that load with one extra, by one room, then they only have 11. And then once their rooms are cleaned, then essentially, they can go home. So the mentality of my mom to essentially wake up every day, 6 a.m., put on her work boots, get us up and go clean hotel rooms for 12 hours. She would go from 7 to 4:30. She would drive home. She would cook my sister and I dinner. I have a younger sister. Cook us dinner. We'd have our family meal if I wasn't at training from like 5 to 5:30, and then she'd literally drive back and do the night shift and get overtime until about 11 p.m. from 6 to 11 p.m. And she did that, I couldn't tell you how many times. And so, so there was one time I made the state ODP team again. But this time as an alternate. And a lot of people don't know I was a goalkeeper till 14. And the only reason I shifted was goalkeeper is a specialized position. Like I was never able to afford goalkeeper training, right? I just had good hands. I played basketball, football growing up, all those types of sports. And I remember my mom was just working unbelievable amounts of overtime in the summer. The summer is a high industry for tourism, hospitality. And I was supposed to meet my friend before cell phones, before all that, at this meeting spot that we always meet at. And then we're going to meet there, and then we're going to drive the 90 miles to Denver to get to the meeting spot for the bus, then drive to the ODP camp for the summer. And I look forward to this all year. And essentially my mom had got back from a shift, and I could tell she was like exhausted. And we usually went out on our patio and just kind of connected on the day. At night, we ate watermelon, different fruit, and she kind of just relaxed. Sometimes she would fall asleep. I'd have to wake her up, and then we both go to bed. And she overslept. We overslept, and she never oversleeps ever. And So we get up there and we literally like ships in a night. I think they called as we were already on the road and said they couldn't wait anymore. And so they left way before cell phones. And so we get there and I essentially missed my ride to get to the ODP bus. And I was devastated. And my mom couldn't get there, like didn't know how to navigate to get to the drop-off point. Plus she had to work, right? And that was income for our house. That's how tight the income, right? The monthly income was that we needed that. And so I'd been scholarshiped into this ODP camp, like everything was great. And I didn't talk to my mom for a week, devastated her and me, like it was painful. Like even thinking back on it. And so for me, I've always been solution oriented. And so I literally just got a ball and just trained harder and more than ever. Like we didn't even fathom like jumping on a Greyhound bus to go meet it. It was just like, I missed it. And so I just started working even harder. And so that year was actually that summer was the summer I transitioned from a goalkeeper to a field player. And again, I was on this brick wall, just imagining being at the ODP camp, even visualizing, what I would do on my club team and just playing on this brick wall with like a vengeance. Then once my mom and I connected, she'll tell this story because it broke her heart to not speak to her son, her firstborn son, for a week, like cold shoulder. But that was ultimately how I shifted, right? I just said, listen, if it will be, it's up to me. And I just need to be able to put in more work than anyone. And I did it, started putting together plans for myself, started like writing down my own technical plans. A lot of it is essentially the origination of my current training program. And so that was that story. The other big story in college, then my mom and I are very close. My freshman year, my mom called me during our spring season. That's when you have 6 a.m. workouts, lifts, all that stuff. I just finished my first collegiate season at Wake Forest, but knew I needed to work to get better. And the coach challenged me, Jay Vidovich, to get better there. So did Bobby Muse, the current head coach of Wake Forest. And I get a call on my buddy's cell phone because I didn't have a cell phone until I was a senior in college. So he had the free limit or the free unlimited minutes on Sprint. I don't know what it was, but a great college roommate. And I was actually the best man in his wedding and the godfather of his son now. So great relationship. And my mom called and I could just hear it in her voice that something was wrong. And I'm just like, I didn't know. And so I asked her, and she had said that she had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And I lost it. I don't think I've cried that hard in my life to this day, like just bawling, right? She was essentially the matriarch of our family, my home. And it was just such a helpless feeling because there was no way for me to help. And so the next morning, right after crying all night, my buddy wakes me up. Ryan Cochran is his name. And he wakes me up and he goes, listen, we have to go to lifting. And I looked at him, I was like, I'm not going to go lift right now. Soccer is the last thing I'm thinking about. And he goes, no, let's get through this together. We'll talk about it, but let's go lift. I think you'll feel better. And so he got me up and we went to lift, did the lift, and went and met with my coach right after. And just said that I have to transfer out. And and he understood. And so he's like, whatever we can do to help you. I was going to transfer to, a small school, Colorado College, right? Great school, great history of the program, but nothing compared to Wake Forest. And I said, I have to be close to home. I need to start working. I don't know if soccer is in it anymore. I have to, right, help my sister, help the family. And so he called me back into that office later that day. And I don't think I went to classes that day. If I did, I stumbled through it and said, listen, we'll work through this together. What can I do to help? So we essentially put an action plan together and we help. But he said he goes, if your mom's taken care of, we'll make sure. He goes, I think the best thing for you to do would be to stay here, get your degree, finish out your, playing soccer. He just knew kind of my family tree and the cycle, right? Being kind of the first in my immediate family to go to college, on a full ride, mind you. So there was already pressure from the get-go. Full ride, a lot of people think you get it for 4 years. It's renewed annually, right? And so you have to have that conversation with the head coach annually. Do we renew this full scholarship? And so it was just such a big turning point. And again, all I did was dive back in to training harder and longer and more. And essentially that's where the trajectory kind of really took off, is I just started excelling. And I was just born to compete. I don't know how it is, just to see my mom go through that, to see us go through what we did when I was young. Like, competing for me is just, it's ingrained. I always say it's time to put on my work boots, and I literally transform. And we go about transformation. I mean, I played with some of the best players in the world, you know, to talk about Landon Donovan, Robbie Keane, Clint Dempsey, Shari Joseph, Taylor Twellman in their prime. And it's a transformation. It's literally a switch. So anytime I put on my boots, I go into someone. It's a switch, and I'm there to compete. It doesn't matter if it's a pickup game at the park, if it's in my training sessions with my group. Like, it's just a switch. And so I've been able to kind of harness that. But those two stories, the first epiphany story, and then my mom being diagnosed with breast cancer, are probably the two biggest stories that help kind of one, establish my mental toughness, my determination, my ability to roll with the punches. Because nothing is, now I looked at any fitness drill, like, it's just fitness, right? There's bigger things in the world going on. It's just fitness, right? The 2-in-1 is just fitness. It's mind over matter. And so was always finish at the top in the exercise at Wake, and then also collegiately. So it just became ingrained. Everyone asks your why story. I mean, my why story is my mom was more proud of me getting my degree from Wake Forest in 3.5 years than she was of me getting drafted 21st overall in MLS, right? Both are, obviously, she knew her great accomplishments, but she was so happy that I could, you know, use soccer as a platform to get my degree, because she finished 6th grade, right? She has a 6th grade education and has been able to do an unbelievable amount with that. Like, I can't even explain how close I am to my mother and just how proud I am of what she's done. But a lot of my mental toughness comes from her. And then obviously you learn different strategies, right? Always just to compete. But a lot of the origination of my mental toughness comes from her.
Wow. I mean, genuine, powerful again. James, I truly appreciate you being so open with it. Because with a lot of people out there listening, you never know, in those audiences, there are a handful that might be going at the time through those moments. And some of the things that I even remember when I was younger as a kid, and times were tough, not too far off with your kind of upbringing as well. Like, I went through difficult times with the mom that gets me emotional as well, where I had to not go to male figures, but sometimes listen to some of the documentaries of elite athletes. What I try to do is backtrack. Oh, Michael Jordan went through that too.
Yeah.
Oh, Kobe went through that too. Oh, you know, Cristiano, Messi, or Ronaldo, people made sacrifices. They were poor. They were in these situations, but they worked hard. They got through it. And I know when they hear, for example, James, he went through it. There was times that they were telling him no. There was adversity that he had to deal with. Okay, I can get through it too. I'm in college right now. I can get through it too. So it's very important. So I truly appreciate that. What I want to kind of get into is, if I put even a scenario on it, of a young aspiring player, maybe he's in the Washington area. He ran into you, and let's just say he's at 14, driven, very difficult environment, and wants to go, not in America. He says that, for me, I watch the game. I love the game. Europe's the highest to me. That's what I view it. I want to be in Europe. And you're like, okay, he's young. He's 14. He has that. He wants it. He's driven. What advices can you give? What is it that they got to sacrifice? What is it that decisions got to be made so they don't miss the boat? Because you know it too, is it's all about decision making, where
Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of friends that decided to go after high school and play at a very elite Division I program,
Mm-hmm.
but then Europe looks at that at 22 being too late now to
Right.
putting your foot in the door in Europe. We know
Right.
a lot of the names you just listed that went to Europe at a certain time, but they didn't want to. They didn't want to do it. They had to
Mm-hmm.
transition back. Kind of what I'm trying to get at is, what would be a recommendation of a blueprint? Is there a blueprint?
Right.
Is there advice that we can do to map it out so they're making not just a moment in the game of football,
Mm-hmm.
but a
Mm-hmm.
career in it?
Yeah. Great question. I don't think there's a true blueprint, right? I think there's different pathways to accomplish that goal. One of them being prior to MLS. So, I mean, what turned me on to soccer was the '94 World Cup, right? We didn't have cable television. I think we had the basic cable. So ESPN, ABC were in that. I mean, before DVR, if you wanted to record a game, like it was like a VHS recording. I watched every second of that World Cup, every second. So from the first half, would watch it, and then at halftime would run into my garage and literally try to mimic every cool thing that I saw. Then I'd run back in for the second half and do the same thing, run back out, watch it, run back out, and like sitting right in front of the television. Then I'd run back out after the game, before the next game, and like try to do everything that I saw. And so from that point to then being at the first inaugural game for the Colorado, well, first back to watching the inaugural game of MLS, I think it was San Jose Class versus DC United. I literally could not wait all day. I watched it. I remember watching it, and that's where it really started to kickstart, right? Being there and then being at the first inaugural game for the Colorado Rapids in the stands as a young 12-year-old boy, I believe 12 or 14, like hoping to be on the field at Mile High Stadium one day, right? And then you go from that to then watching it in college, being drafted into it, having an 11-year career, Major League Soccer. And then post my retirement, I went and worked at MLS headquarters for 2 years as a director of player relations and competition. So I've been in that league for as long as I can remember. It was never viewed as a springboard league, right? It essentially was a quote unquote retirement league, but it's more marketing purposes, right? You have to elevate the brand of the league. Now it is 100% a springboard league. Like the clubs have no problem selling on players. Before they were trying to hold on to players. You see so many young players get sold on now. So one avenue is the academy route, right? The club level, whether it's academy, DA, ECNL, but migrating in your local market, going up levels, and then signing deals. USL teams, especially if they're attached to academies, are signing so many young players now. You take the Tacoma Defiance and Seattle Sounders. I mean, they're signing young players, 16, 17, 15, 16, 17-year-old players with the thought of selling them on. They're providing an education, professional environment, and the goal is to promote them to the first team or to sell them on. So that's a domestic route. That's something you can do within, the region that you live in. Obviously, spots are limited with that. So that would be one. Another, I think, another viable route, and we spoke about it briefly, is just the professional combines. There's so many combines that occur now that actually bring in scouts. So even if you go to a combine at 15, 16, 17, you get your player waiver, parent waiver, at least you can see what you're up against, right? And playing up is huge. And that was my biggest development is I used to watch so much soccer. Like the Univision on Sundays after church, I would watch Chivas, Guadalajara, Club America. Like I would just watch games on Univision. I remember in Spanish, I'm just like had to watch games. I begged my mom to get Fox Soccer Espanol and Fox Soccer, and I would just watch. I was exposed to the Brazilian leagues, like Colombian leagues, like everything. And so now I think with the progression of the game in this league or in this country, there's so many scouts out there. But I think going to a pro combine in some capacity, or navigating the youth ranks at your local level are kind of two viable ways that I would see making that progression.
Nice, fantastic. Now we want to kind of get into life after football, soccer. One of the reasons I wanted to kind of ask this question is I've had some discussion with some friends and even ourselves is when you're a football player, people are handling your schedule. You're on a routine.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do a lot yourself. You have your trainers, you have people that are managing through the club organization that you're affiliated with, especially if you're at a higher level, it's
Yeah.
even more catered to that. So a lot of players that are done with football, they didn't do a lot themselves. So they don't know how to map it, how to get on it. What is life? What do I do? Do I coach? Do
Yeah.
I still stay in
Yeah.
the game? Do I go business? Do I just leave it? Do I go in a spiritual route? Where
Mm-hmm.
do I go to calm myself down? How do I, if I'm competitive, have something still fuming that gets me through life? Because a lot of
Yeah.
people is like they're finding that other niche that keeps that competition
Yeah.
going because they can't turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for James, what is it that got you going? Was it difficult moments? And after that, what did you do, and what kind of got you on that platform that you are at now today?
And great question. Great question. So I was fortunate because I just knew that early on. There's actual several points during my career where I thought about retiring. So I was already looking at the next chapter. I think 3 points in my career, early on, middle, and towards the end, I looked at retiring. So that's when I just, realized that the team that I was on was a huge brand in the community. And then me personally became a personal brand. And so it was another mentor that reached out and said, you should probably try to start interning, or at least doing like 1 day shadows in different industries so that right? You said, even if you don't like that industry, at least you can close the door. He said, it doesn't always have to be the perfect fit. So I started doing that in Seattle, where I played 3 years and just had a great relationship with the community. I mean, I did several job shadowing experiences, half day, 1 day experiences, just to get my foot in that door. I always thought my next move was going to be business school. I always wanted to go back and get my MBA. So in my last year, my 11th year with the Rapids, I was studying for the GMAT and trying to go that route. Then the entrepreneurship kind of mindset was always there, but I never really pursued it. So then I really started pursuing entrepreneurship and wanted to always start my own business and start my own training business. And so being in Colorado Springs, being one of the very few, not only to have the career that I had, I felt I could be at home, and help serve this community where I developed. So that was the origination of JR7 Soccer, was in Colorado Springs. I kid you not, I went down and got my beast mode soccer certification with Dave Copeland. Went there because I felt I needed some curriculum. Great guy. I went over, and during my rehab when I was with the LA Galaxy, Toka became a huge part of it. And so I knew Eddie Lewis well. I was able to get 4 Toka machines. I think I was one of the first people to export machines out of Southern California. I was able to get 4 machines delivered to Colorado Springs at this performance gym that I was going to set up. And that was going to be, we struck up a partnership, and that's where I was going to, run my training. And literally a week before the launch, I get a call from Major League Soccer saying they have an opening and they would like me to inquire whether I was interested in the position. And so I said, of course, please send it over, the job description. And they sent it over, and it was essentially the director of player relations and competition. People that had been in this position before were essentially getting promoted to sporting directors and GMs. So Ollie Curtis was in the original position. At that time, he was promoted to become the sporting director at New York Red Bulls at the time. And so I was taking over that position. And then you just kind of learn the intricacies of the league, contracts, how contracts work, salary budgets, different mechanisms to bring players in, the TAM, the GAM, DPs, homegrowns, like the whole gambit. And so I said, great experience. I never thought I'd be in New York long, but I had a mentor come to me, right? Going back, connecting the NBA to the MLS offer. And he goes, James, you've always wanted to go to business school, B school. I'm like, absolutely. He goes, you always want to go top tier B school. And I'm like, 100% want to go like Harvard, the big NBA schools. And he goes, well, and you've always wanted to go there, do it for free, right? The least expensive route. And I go, absolutely. He goes, this offer that you just received from Major League Soccer is literally that in a different form, right? They're going to pay you what they're going to pay you. Your network's going to be expanded beyond belief. You're going to be in boardroom meetings with the commissioner and club owners, which I was. You're going to be meeting with GMs on a daily basis, speaking to GMs on a daily basis, and you'll be in New York. He goes, I would think about what you really originally wanted and view this opportunity as that in a different form. And I did that. And ultimately I said yes to the position in New York. And he goes, if you don't like it after 2 years, just like an MBA school, you can shift and pivot. And that's essentially what happened. Did it for about 2 years, and the whole time I was there, I was coaching soccer, right? I got involved with some, AP2T, which is an awesome soccer performance center. I was doing private sessions at Pier 40, which is like, for me, one of the soccer meccas in the country. I mean, there's soccer there 24/7, pickup games, club like it's unbelievable, right, in the city of Manhattan. And so I would literally come to work with like my training bag and like jump up, go after work, go run on the train with my training. Like couldn't wait to just change clothes and go run around. So that's when I knew I wanted to pivot. A blessing was, my now fiance getting pregnant with my daughter is probably the biggest transition. I said, I don't want to raise a child in New York. I'd rather be in Seattle. And that started the shift to Seattle. Very thankful for Major League Soccer. They were so gracious with my decision, and essentially, gave me a separation package that would take care of me for the, 6 months or so. And so they said, anything we can do to help, we appreciate what you've done for the league as a player. And now here on the other side, and if it's not a fit now, we want to wish you the best of luck. So still so thankful for that. And I remember having a personal conversation with Don Garber prior to getting hired and then afterwards. And still to this day, I think he's one of the most underrated, fantastic commissioners of a league. Like tremendous respect for him and his leadership brass. So came to Seattle and did that. I did therapy for 2 weeks. I was already doing it because it transitioned into essentially I went from being on the field to in a boardroom within 6 months. And I always had been a player rep. I had always been interning, player rep for the players union. I've been interning. And so to actually be there, you're right, I didn't know how to function in a corporate environment fully, right? So you had to learn all these skills, these high performance habits on that side. I had the high performance habits in the soccer realm, but to do it in a corporate world was very difficult for me. And so that was it for 2 years. It was literally a 2-year exploration. Like it still wasn't refined. I still didn't know how to fully navigate it. So that's when I started going through to therapy. I had a life coach just to try to navigate that because it was so difficult to do, right? To turn that page and now be seen as not the soccer player anymore, but someone in the office doing the work that maybe I wasn't fully passionate about, and having that weight daily. It was like, I know this is an unbelievable opportunity, but it's not congruent and doesn't align with what I want to do. I can't wait to be on the field and just coach and teach and mentor and things like that. And so then that led to me going back to the idea of JR7 Soccer and being a business owner, which I have been for going on 2 years now. And it's been a huge blessing, right? It gives me the time freedom to be with the family. And I'm able to exercise daily, but also fulfill my passions of coaching, mentoring, and using the beautiful game, being that, that good mentor that was so helpful for me, that influential mentor that spoke life into players that have dreams and ambitions and goals. And for me, there's nothing better than that. So that was that navigation and exploration, but then daily still just being a business owner as well as just high performance habits, productivity, meditation and yoga were a big practice of mine as a player, but adding that in, learning how to execute your day, it's still a never ending journey. So it's a great question. So I'm always willing to help out former players that reach out, that have questions about the next chapter, the next phase, because it's not difficult. I mean, it was therapy. It was life coaching, self-exploration. I mean, you name it. And it's constantly still to this day being refined.
I know, James, you touched on it. I mean, that was fantastic. You touched on some points and we want to get into it. Is the ultimate successful people in any field, However, we admire them anyway. The reason they're there is because they've had better mentors, coaches, leaders in their life. That's flat out. Whoever's the greatest in the game, the reason they got there, if it's their mom, if it's their dad, if it's their coach, if it's an aunt, if it's an agent, whoever was willing, the stuff you said in our interview is either sacrifices they made for them so they can have time, the certain aspects they touched on to make them stronger. I want to get into your perspective of it, your opinion of it. What are the key qualities that a mentor, a coach, a leader requires or needs to kind of, help maximize the youth? Because in the end of the day, I think it's a cycle. Our mentorships are going to be limited to a certain point, and that youth, however quality you put in, become the future mentors, whatever journey it is. So I want to know, in your opinion, the stuff you went through, obviously everybody's opinion is different, the stuff you went through and the mentor you are now, what are it, when you look back to this, are key qualities you've gained from the mentors around you, and key qualities you think are necessary to have to impact the youth in unbelievable, unprecedented ways to maximize their potential?
Great questions. One of the biggest things I think I learned, and I still use it today, is from Wake Forest University, and we used to have it on our wall. But this is how Jay Vidovich, Bobby Muse used to recruit, and they used to say, winning people make winning players make winning teams. And so even to this day, if I call a coach about a player, he never asks. The first question is never what position, how is he as a player, how tall is he, what's his 40 time, what's his 2-mile time, what's his technique like. It's always, how is he as a person? Always, without hesitation, whether at the collegiate level or the professional level. And so that's why you go back to Wake Forest, said winning player or winning people. They recruit winning people first. You have to be a winning person. Then winning people make winning players. Those winning players make winning teams. And so I think just having a standard, but a lot of the times, because I didn't have a father figure, you don't know your standard and you don't have that belief in yourself necessarily. You don't know what you don't know. So you need someone that's been there or can see your life at a bigger purpose. And so that was the biggest thing, is you need a mentor has a belief and continue see you not for who you are now, but what your future self could be. And then they give you the plan and action steps to reverse engineer that. Is essentially, the biggest thing. And so I just feel, my core values as JR7 soccer is faith, fatherhood, and soccer. So faith, just I believe in a higher being. I believe in God. I believe in treating others with respect, humility, empathy, being fully welcoming, and things of that sort. Right? I just believe in that innately. My mom was a big follower, and I just saw our life shift into that direct. I mean, she hosts Bible studies at our house every Friday. Like, it was just, I lived the shift, and how she's so happy and lives it, and it's become her community, Korean congregation. Like, I've seen that shift in my own eyes. And I think fatherhood, because, my daughter is the biggest blessing that I could ever ask for. And so that's how I try to treat my players. I mean, these players are essentially the sons and daughters of mothers and fathers. Like, I want my daughter to be treated in a way where you have a coach that is looking at her for her potential of what she could become, but it treats her with tremendous, decency and respect, and is very encouraging and challenging and loving at the same time. I just think that's huge. So you talk about fatherhood, and then soccer. I think the beautiful game is just one of the ultimate platforms of expression and inclusion for anyone of any gender, any creed, any nationality. Like, it's a ball on a field. It could be a ball on a street corner. It could be a ball, just a ball, right? And so those are my core values, and those are what I try to express. And so I always want my players to have a joy and expression for the game. I always want them to learn something about themselves, about how on and off the field, how they can refine their processes. And I want them just to be good citizens. I just think that's so important. So whether it's the referee, whether it's your teammates, right? We had a bullying issue, right? How do you address that? So I was addressing those things, just being a good person. I said, if you do that, the other things will come. So again, we go back to, Wake Forest's motto is winning people make winning players make winning teams. And that is so, so huge for me, and something that I still live by.
No, that's fantastic. Couldn't said it any better. So we want to kind of wrap it up on our end on the final question. We'd love to have some fun with these two part A, part B question. It allows us to know you more individually. And what I say by that is we want to have you pick your favorite player of all time, athlete. And favorite team of all time. But we don't want it only to be in football, because we want to kind of, any moment in your life, if this kind of got you involved in, motivated as an athlete, you wanted to imitate just in the environment you were being upbrought, I want us to elaborate on it. And that's why I don't want to have any restrictions on it. And if you have more than one, by all means, you can select that. You can have a 1A, 1B. Gotcha. But favorite athlete of all time, any sports, and favorite team of all time.
Got ya. Great question. It's an easy one for me. It's a no-brainer. Michael Jordan, 100%. Watching WGN, I think on like Wednesday and Saturday nights would be the game, and that was the guy for me. So The Last Dance was special to kind of relive that. My family and I would have popcorn and snacks and watch it as it premiered each episode. And I think favorite team of all time, I think it would be the Chicago Bulls. I mean, I think basketball was huge for me. So you go back to the competitiveness and the mentality. I played on a basketball team where it's like full court press for the entire game, mano a mano, one-on-one, right? Your guy scores less points than you, right? You switch and help on occasion, but that was where you get a one-on-one mentality. And being an outside back, you're certainly left on an island. You have to be able to defend one-on-one. And then you also have to be able to go on the attack and pick and choose and try to outsmart guys. And it's not always, brawn, it's brain over brawn, right? It doesn't always have to be just a physicality. So that was huge. But Michael Jordan, for me, he loved to train, relished training. And I remember, going back a few steps, I saw Eric Cantona video, and it said the same thing. He loved to train. And at the time, he was the king at Manchester United. So I would say, seeing those two guys say they love to train is still to this day embedded in me. I can literally picture the video of Eric Cantona. I think he was dribbling indoor on a futsal court, and it was his voiceover saying, "I love to train. Training is what keeps me at the top of my game," keeps, things like that. And I go, yeah, I love to train too now, right? And so I say the Chicago Bulls, and then also Manchester United, because they were the team that was so branded here in the United States during the year they won the treble. I remember skipping PE, advanced weightlifting, as a senior, and I almost failed this class. And my best friend at the time was the teacher of this class. I almost failed it because every big Champions League game on a Tuesday or Wednesday, I would just leave after lunch. My mom didn't care. I mean, she cared, but like my mom's like, "What are you going to do?" He's doing everything else right. Like he wants to watch a soccer game. So I would skip. I got a C in advanced weightlifting because I think I skipped for the semi, the final, and maybe a quarterfinal match, something. And I skipped. So that's pretty funny. But Manchester United was just branded here. I mean, you had Beckham, Giggs, Scholesy. I mean, Cantona. You go back to like Keane. I mean, it was just such an unbelievable team. Andy Cole, Dwight York, like it was just, and that was a team I feel was just so branded here in the United States, and they were so good. And so I would say Chicago Bulls and Manchester United were the two teams that I really grew up watching and idolizing. And then players, Michael Jordan on the soccer side, or on the basketball side. On the soccer side, my favorite player growing up, it's funny, was Rivaldo. I'm not even left-footed. I loved Rivaldo. Loved him. And Roberto Carlos. I would say Rivaldo, Roberto Carlos, Cafu were kind of like my trifecta of players. Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, it's so, those memories you bring back, the 98 Brazilian airport commercial.
Oh, amazing. Amazing.
Those times where you go and miss your lunchtime to go, because now today you can probably pull it up on your smartphone.
I know it.
In class and watch the game. Or why watch the game when you get quality HD highlights on YouTube when you get home? So it's different than those times. I mean, there was good, valuable memories, especially. It's funny how you said Michael Jordan. I think right off the bat, if you don't even like Michael Jordan, I'll be surprised. But if you're a competitor, that episode 7, I believe, at the end, him and Tim Grover got very emotional. And you can tell it was genuine. It wasn't scripted. In that moment where he just talked about how he was built. And when you even hear him talk, there is a thing about him that I know it touches a lot to your story too, where people tried to break him when he was young. Like, you're not going to make it. Like, you're going to be cut. You're going to be that. And he just wanted to be successful. And in that high school period, that time where he thought like he can't make it because it's not realistic, go get another job. When he broke out, there was no stopping it because like you said, those epiphany moments molded kind of the competitor, where he's like, every time, if you saw his Hall of Fame speech, it's like, I remember what you told me, but I proved you wrong. So it's for us competitors, especially if you went through certain moments, there's people that kind of wrap your arms around, because you're like, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about, facing adversity and rising up and appreciating the people that were by the sides and really gave you everything in those moments. But again, James, what a fantastic discussion about the beautiful game, and even your backstory. I honestly did not even know the certain moments in your story, and it was very fascinating. It was very genuine. And I know a lot of our audience would love to know that, because in the end of the day, if we're young, if we're aspiring, if we're trying to make it in any field, we want to question and know how to get to certain parts. And one of the things that I didn't even know about Kobe Bryant is how close he was with Michael Jordan. I did not know that until his memorial service that Michael Jordan spoke. And I didn't even know Kobe was calling him that much. I thought Kobe was one of those guys that didn't call anyone.
Likewise,
but it showed how close he was and how much he respected him, because you wouldn't see that on the interview thing. You thought he just wanted to pass him, but he had the biggest respect, that constantly questioning. And doesn't matter if he got no's or something, he just wanted to know. And I think people that listen to these podcasts, they're constantly trying to see, okay, who goes through what? I'm dealing with a tough time. How do I get through it? Okay, this is a great point person. I want to know. I want to get there. I love it. Like James loves it. I love it. I want to know, what are the tools I need to add? What are the qualities to take? And that's what it is. If they put it right together. And I think with technology, with these podcasts, some people might be in environments where they don't have access to you or another coach. And now they can pull it up and listen from a distance. And maybe you are their longtime mentor that you weren't even knowing about. So again, truly appreciate it. We want to do what we do with our guests, is give you the platform to close us out with any plugs you have going on, any projects you want our audience to be aware of. And we can kind of go on our ways from there.
Perfect. So here it goes. So again, just wanted to thank you. Tremendous platform. Appreciate the conversation. Any opportunity I have to talk about the beautiful game, I relish. So I appreciate you as a great host and for the invitation. It was truly special. And hope to be back on the podcast again when you'll have me. So thank you. So I'm James Riley, I'm James Riley, Seattle's premier soccer trainer and mentor for aspiring college and professional soccer players. More specifically, I help competitive soccer players elevate their game to new standards by teaching them how to eat, think, and train like a pro. Please visit my website at jr7soccer.com to learn more and access my free signature training program. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, James. Truly a pleasure.
Thank you. Likewise. I appreciate it. Thank you. Look forward to the final product. It was fun.
Of course. Be safe.
Thank you. Likewise. Thanks, Shawn. Take care.